So, let me start with a personal story. As you may guess from my face, I am not of Western European descent. My family originally came from China. Over the course of the 19th century, they moved to Indonesia, and they settled down there for several generations. Then, in the 1960s, my parents and grandparents made the move to the Netherlands, and it was out here where I was born and raised. Raised in a world where archived history is quite common, where old stories come with books, manuscripts, as we saw in the talk before. Even for friends around me, it would be easy to trace down their own personal history. They could have family trees, which would go back for centuries. And I was a little bit jealous of that, because I didn't have that myself. With all these moves, with the new languages that my family's learned, with not so much of an archival culture, my oldest documented history regarding my background looks like this and like that. Pictures from the albums of my grandparents. More specifically, these are pictures from the album of my grandmother, depicting the family of her grandfather, my great-great-grandfather. He had a house in Indonesia, a big house, to accommodate his family and extended family. And I heard these stories of my grandma who went there when she was small, playing around there, going to celebrations. It sounded like something really impressive. But this was all I had, black and white, pictures of the past. Then last fall happened. Last fall when I found myself in Indonesia because of the wedding of a cousin. And as it turned out, actually I was staying not far away from this place, this house. The house turned out to have been restored into near original state. And I could go there. And suddenly, it all became real. I could walk around there. I could see the environment my grandma talked about. I was traveling back 80 years in time. And I could see all those landmarks. I could feel them. I suddenly could imagine how it would have looked like. And I didn't care that I didn't have much more history than that. This is the back of the house. You see the pillars. It's the same pillars that you see here on the family picture. So I went through with the camera and I tried to capture every bit of it to bring home to show my grandma who couldn't travel there anymore. That was a magical realization. This black and white picture suddenly becoming a live thing. And when I thought of it, actually this is something that as a musician you also often try to strive for. As a musician, typically you look at a notated score first. It's black and white. It's dots on a paper. It says you where you should play, what you should play. But that's not the end of the story, that's the beginning. Composers might depict much more than just a pitch or saying how loud you have to play. I can give you an example. Johann Sebastian Bach. Right now it's Easter time. We almost have Easter, which means we have a lot of concerts out here in Holland, passions. Passions which depict the story of Christ. Christ being tortured, brought to court, crucified. You have a lot of these concerts. This is an example from the St. John's Passion in which you see something very interesting happening. This is the part when Jesus just has died. There is an evangelist who is commenting and basically a lot of times reciting texts from the Bible. And there is this text in the Gospel at one point which says, "And then behold, the veil of the temple was rended in twain, it teared apart from the top to the bottom. And the earth quaked, and the rocks burst, and the graves opened, and out came the bodies of many saints who had slept." That's quite a heavy text, and you can hear what happens in the music. The evangelist is singing in German. I will try to show it to you. Und siehe da, der Vorhang im Tempel zerriss in zwei Stück, von oben an bis unten aus. Und die Erde erbebte, und die Felsen zerrissen, und die Gräber täten sich auf, und stunden auf wie Leiber der Heiligen. Now, even if you don't understand any word of German, or my funny accent, you might have heard when this veil of the temple was rended in twain. You even see it happening in the score. There it goes. You also hear the earthquaking. And actually, Bach really also uses the way he writes down the voice to tell this story. And then behold, pause. The veil of the temple was rended in twain from the top to the bottom. And he uses pitches there. Von oben an, von the top, bis unten aus, to the bottom. That's low in the voice. He starts even lower when he starts to talk about the earthquake. Earthquakes, well, they tend to be in the ground. They're down there. But there's another reason for that. Because if you are so low in your voice, as a singer, you cannot sing very loudly. So you use that to build up the tension. And the earth quaked, and the rocks burst, and the graves opened, and out came the bodies of many saints who had slept. And so within these 3 staves, there is a whole world contained. Even if a composer is not spelling it out so much for you, and giving you very little material, you still can do a lot with it. Given that I just gave you a German example, I now have to give you a French example. This is a song by Gabriel Fauré, Le Papillon et la Fleur. It's about a butterfly and a flower. Rather simple song, and it has really the most boring of all accompaniments imaginable. It will be like this. Then you have 2 choices as a pianist. You play it like that, or you make something out of it. I'll try to make something out of it. I hope you hear it. La pauvre fleur disait au papillon céleste, ne fuis pas, vois comme nos destins sont différents, je reste tout en vain. Pourtant nous nous aimons, nous vivons sans les hommes, et loin d'eux. Et nous nous ressemblons, et l'on dit que nous sommes fleurs tous deux. Mais hélas, l'air t'emporter, la terre m'enchaîne, sont cruels. Je voudrais embaumer ton vol de mon haleine dans le ciel. Mais non, tu vas trop loin parmi les fleurs sans nombre, vous fuyez. Et moi je reste seule à voir tourner mon ombre à mes pieds. Tu fuis, puis tu reviens, puis tu t'en vas encore, ni rien. Aussi me trouves-tu toujours à chaque aurore, tout en pleurs, pour que notre amour coule des jours fidèles. Oh mon roi, prends comme ma racine, oh donne-moi des ailes comme toi. This was 3 times exactly the same notes, but I hope you heard that it wasn't 3 times exactly the same repetition of music. You can use this material to shape it. And if you have music, actually you can even use music to change perceptions of things around it. I found it out when thinking of connecting music to image. Let's go back to this house of my great-great-grandfather and let's give it some nice soundtracks. I'll first start with well, one option you can give to this. That's one possible way, maybe sketching a little bit of a melancholy mood. But we can also do something very different. I don't know about you. I look at the same video under this music. Somehow it looks much more ominous, and it even looks as if there is more movement in the video. It's not true, it's exactly the same video. But this is what music could do to your mind. So here are some examples of this kitchen of the musician. But that's not all I wanted to talk about today. I want to move now towards this other field of my professional life, computer science, being a researcher in multimedia data in the Internet Society. I especially look at places where these two come together, and there you can have very, very interesting encounters. A few years ago, I had to finish my music studies as a pianist, and I had to do a research assignment, which I decided to focus on the work of Frédéric Chopin. And I went into libraries, I looked into books, but I also went out on the internet, and there I found this. It's an article from 1832 from a music periodical, and it's a review. It's talking about Chopin being in Paris, young talent, people don't really know him, and he plays a piece that he composed himself, his first piano concerto, as the premiere. I could reach this just by sitting at my chair. I could read it as if I was living in that same century, as if next week I could decide to go out and go to a concert of Chopin myself. Unfortunately, that is not possible, and we also don't have recorded material of Chopin because he lived a little bit too early for that. But we still have something coming close to that. I found this recording on YouTube. This is Raoul Kochalski, a pianist from the early 20th century. He plays a very famous piece, but he does it differently from what people do now. He takes a lot of free time, he stops a lot in the timing, and he is even adding notes. So here, he really stretches out what happens there. And now, for example, that run, I think no pianist right now would dare playing that, because it's not in the score. But when I looked into it more deeply, I figured out this guy, Kochalski, had studied with a guy named Mikuli. Mikuli was a student of Chopin, even was his assistant. Chopin had written down these extra ornaments in the score of Mikuli when he was teaching him. This is information we didn't get anymore in our current editions. And still, apparently, this is something quite authentic. So I had this way of listening and maybe getting a glimpse of what it could have sounded like in the time of Chopin. Once again, just sitting at home. So that's what technology can do. It can warp you back in time as well, over these hundreds of years, without you actually having to get on a plane and go to Indonesia and go into a house. So I talked about YouTube. Well, there is a problem with that, actually. I found this recording there, but as I said, Kochalski is not really famous. And there is a lot of data on YouTube. People really go there also. This is a music consumption survey, and they say, yeah, we really often watch music on the web. So people go there as a music service, and they listen there to things. But we have to challenge here, especially as technologists, how to make sure that people get interesting information. 70 hours of video are uploaded to YouTube every minute. From the start that I started this talk to the very end, we have 2 months' worth of new video on the web. No soul on earth can look at that. So we need to aid that with technology. But we have a big question then there. What is relevant? Typically for us, we tend to go for, let's say, the most obvious measures. You go for popularity, things that people watch a lot, high quality. Those are things that many people should possibly like. Yes, that's true. But then, you would miss, for example, this archival material, because people don't know it exists. You also might miss something like this, because the internet is flooding with pet videos. This is just one random video of a dog jumping against the door. It had 10 views when I found it. It's just one of the extremely many. But still, does it mean that this deserves to get lost? Still, someone captured it for some reason. And that's a question that I think we should really be aware of in this era of big data. What music has been teaching me is that its initial appearance is to start an entrance into a possible world. These scores, you use them not as the finalized thing, but you use them as an entrance to make nice music out of it, to speak to people. I think it's the same with these things. It might be very unassuming in terms of looks. Low quality images, strange resolution of this dog video, a bad scan of an old article, a recording with a lot of hiss from the 1920s. a badly recorded video of someone walking around in a random house in Indonesia. And still behind that, there is a lot of value. A raw diamond, in real, if you take it, it doesn't look very nice. You have to put effort into it, you have to polish it, and then its facets come out. And I think the same holds for the data we have right now on the web. So for you, you might not be musicians, you might not be computer scientists, but you're still citizens of this web society, the world of plenty, with all these information streams coming at you. And I want to ask you, please, do not sit back and just let it happen. While we are still figure out what's relevant for you, please also be active, don't be shallow. There is so much out there. I want to send you back with a mission. The coming days, look around a little bit more closely, also in your analog world, since it's mixing now with our digital world. Try to find some objects you would have overlooked easily. Try to find videos on the web that hardly have been seen by people. And still try to figure out the personal merit it may have for you. Do not overlook these hidden gems, but rediscover them. We have a Facebook page connected to this event. There will be a YouTube page in the end when my video gets processed. And I'd be very happy if you would be willing to share the stories that come out of it, because I'm curious to see what you will find. And I thank you very much for your attention.